All right, so we should be live now, or somewhere near that, because there is a
Yes, sir.
delay.
Yep, I see it.
You do see it now?
Yep.
Let me see if I can find it on mine so I can. Okay. Yeah, and see, like, it's supposed to start streaming through OBS automatically, which it does, but then I think you still have to click stream now in YouTube,
Yeah.
which I thought it did it automatically, but see, again, it's really confusing. But either way, so we
I'll
have people
check out the
watching,
intro,
and
man.
what's that?
I'll check out the intro when it plays back if
Okay.
you render it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of caught the end of it, and I did see the intro. So the intro did play. It's just more about when it goes live or not. Like, again, it's just confusing. But either way, like, this is
Mhm.
my second live stream, so
Yeah.
it's working out the bugs. So anyways, I'm less concerned about who's on to chat live versus just having this on the internet, for later viewing and things. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so as we were talking about before, um, yeah, I mean, so what do you let me kick it off. Like, what do you think with or of where we are today with ball versus flat?
Uh, Man, Chris, I would say just personally, we were talking before this went live, and I think for me, when I was on Non Sequitur, I believe around November, December timeframe, I was still getting planted, in flat Earth. I did obviously have a strong conviction. I would say a lot of it at that point was just the sort of general points, about water and stuff. And I would say I was leveraging possibly the Bible the most for the motivation to go onto those platforms. But since then, credit to people definitely like yourself, Red Pill, and Oakley's channel. I think I've watched almost every single one of Oakley's videos, and like it's to me just an incredible repository of information and dialogue and all that. And some people don't like Nathan's personality. I find him incredibly entertaining. Obviously he
Right.
gets short with people, but if you're dealing with a lot of people, some you don't know what their intentions are when they come on. You're going to get kind of quick with certain people. So I give him a lot of leeway. But yeah, I mean, I would say I'm certain now that the Earth is flat. I would say my certainty lies more these days in the fact that we're not spinning and the sheer mass of the Earth. The Earth cannot be perpetually spinning. I think those are the two things that I would sort of lean on in terms of certainty, like absolute certainty. Like the proofs that are out there for spin to me are ridiculous, and I have no reason to even really think about those and go beyond anything really. And I think the stuff you're doing and the tests and experiments are just really charity, honestly, for for ball earthers. Just everything beyond that to me at this point is like doing it for them, to like let them know, like, yeah, like all the things that you're holding on to on the ball can indeed be explained on a flat plane, very elegantly. So yeah, not in an arrogant way, but I would say at this stage, June 6th, I'm pretty certain we're on a flat stationary Earth. So,
Right.
how about you, Chris? If you don't mind me asking you, like where you're at, and it's hard to quantify something like this, but
Yeah. Well, as I said before we started just chit-chatting a little bit, I mean, you can never say 100%, right? I mean, I'm not 100% that I'm even a real, thing, as opposed to say like a computer simulation or whatever your philosophy is. But, I'm like 90%, 95% sure it's flat. And if you were to ask me what my, evidence is of that, um, to give that type of number, I would say, like you just said, things that people are going out and doing, testing our world and
yeah,
seeing if there's curvature. So for example, when someone goes out and does an 18-mile mirror reflection test over water, and you can see it basically shore to shore, 5 feet
yeah,
on one end, 5 feet on the other. So let's give them 10 feet at 18 miles. You're like, what's that, 200 feet of missing curvature or something, or 150 feet?
yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, that that's what the flat Earth model, if you want to call it that, would
yeah,
say and show. And a ball model, you have to attribute something that it doesn't account for, and that's what people like Rumpus call superlooming. So
yeah,
we're actually, and I like this, and I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it until I'm proven otherwise, but we're winning the battle on the ground, like the ground war, so to speak. In other words, tests
Correct.
that people are doing on the ground and over the water, we're winning as flat earthers. So
Well
then they'll
said.
say, "Oh, okay, but what about the sun and the moon and the stars? Like, well, what about the angled Polaris, right? Like, how do you explain that?
Yeah.
It's only possible on a ball Earth, right?" So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, hey, look, if you want the sky, you can have the
Mhm.
sky for now
Yeah.
until we get to that point, right? And we can get to that point, but right now we're still focused on the ground and the waters.
Yeah. Dude, that's well said, man. I think that's a good way to describe the battle and how it's partitioned. That's yeah, well, agreed for sure, man. I think that what when you mentioned super looming, man, that I think you posted the snippet of that hangout, and I think this would be, and again, we're not doing this like we're getting some kind of award or trying to like make Rumpus seem dumb or anything like that. I believe he's a liar, obviously, about the shape of the Earth, but when he mentioned that thing about super looming and how Anthony's observation sort of caused his model to need to be sort of extended, and like stretched a little bit more. That to me was the part that was the most weakest, because if you can see something that far away and your model kind of is taken, off guard a little bit, that to me is very, very strange. Like even the way he says it, you can tell that it's odd, for his understanding that you can do that. You can see something shore to shore from that far away. And so it's not just that, as there's many, many people now who are literally flooding YouTube with distances that do not work on a ball where
Right.
things can be seen. So, yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, look, if we're at this stalemate where we say 18 miles shore to shore and you say super looming,
Yeah.
well, that means we're at a stalemate, and that means we have to, right, prove one of those sides. And I've not seen, and so if you were to say, well, prove the flat Earth side, well, it's pretty simple, right? It's light, you see it, and that's it, and you see it
Yeah.
18 miles away. And on a ball, you have to do all sorts of magical, like mathematical things to get it to loom, to rather super loom
Yeah.
up over an 18-mile, 150 feet worth of curve. And I just have not seen, and I've asked people, well, like Rumpus, like, well, what are the conditions you need? Like, do you need extreme heat and cold to do that? Or do you just need, a nice 85-degree sunny day, right? Like, because it's
Yeah.
not described in any literature as far as I can tell or find.
Yeah.
And if it's
I haven't
not,
seen
then
it,
why
man.
is it
I
not?
haven't seen it. And Chris, sorry to interrupt, but he told me that there was one paper that Ruhif found, one paper that alludes to, even like vaguely alludes to this. You're telling me that super looming is only the underpinning is one paper that one other baller kind of happenstance found? Like, come on. Like, they're boasting about this quote body of science being their sort of foundation for all the things that have good has come from the world. It's like, but you got one paper that barely, is scratched the surface that explains, would need to not just explain that observation, but many others. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous.
Right. Like, this would be a well-known phenomena in
Agreed.
quote-unquote science and
Yep.
optics if it was that prevalent, which it is prevalent because we have dozens and dozens and dozens of observations from various people, Ranty Flat Earth,
Yep.
um, Red Pill Philosophy.
Ranty's,
Uh,
I think, the most underrated. He does so much good work, in my opinion. But
well,
yeah.
see, the ballers know his work is devastating. So what they'll do is see they play psychology and they say, "Oh, Ranty's proving the globe,"
Right.
but they
Yep.
just say that they don't take it any further and they don't show how he's proving the globe.
Yep.
See, it's a psychological game to them. Like I can
Correct.
just say, "Oh, the rumpus is proving flat Earth," right?
Yep.
Well, if I don't back that up, it's just meaningless and empty words. So that's what they do with
Yep.
Ranty. I mean, Ranty's got an 18-mile, 1 foot
Jeez.
observation shore to
Yeah.
shore, and
Yeah.
it's insane. And it's like there's no looming. There's some refraction, but virtually very little. And there's no rather distortion. Like all the edges are straight. All
Yep.
the sizes are proportional, and there's just absolutely no explanation on a ball. The ball model doesn't account for refraction.
Yep.
Maybe it accounts for perspective. I'm not sure, but it definitely doesn't account for refraction. So if you go to like any of these online calculators, they're just not holistic like that.
Agreed. And they're changing every day. It's like they're getting whiteout. I've heard so many stories recently of curve calculators dropping, pardon the pun, dropping, different numbers and putting, qualifications on numbers and all that kind of stuff. Like it's getting ridiculous. But one point about your thing, Chris, a while ago, remember that hangout you did where you showed the different horizons and use Jose's pictures with that high rise building and the three different mirror layers and stuff.
Right.
That to me was actually very, very compelling, because this whole time I would say the bottom up thing was for me personally one of the things that I still needed to sort of understand, and how that worked. But I think that hangout and the understanding that I've sort of looked into after that, largely because of Life is Short and stuff like that too. I mean, that was it for me. That what you walked through cannot happen on a curved Earth.
Let me pull it up. I'm screen sharing.
Yeah, that's Jose helping.
This what you're talking about?
Yeah, this to me was a gift from Jose. So I'm on his case about censorship, but in my opinion, this image is very clearly.
Man, he was like a super Nazi this morning, dude. He was like, he timed me out. He timed someone else out. He got on. We were having actually a good, decent conversation between me, Brenda, and Ali B about like economics and free markets.
Oh my God, dude, I wish I was there.
Oh, dude, you missed it. And he was like, this is not what the show's about. He's like, change the topic immediately. and even Brenda, who's like one of the major baltards, was like, but Jose, like, we're having a decent conversation. Like, let us finish. And he was like, no, change it now. So, look, we already have...
Brenda's saying, calm down. That's something to pay attention to.
Exactly. Sure. That was the ironic thing. Like, look, we already have, Nanny, YouTube, and Google...
correct,
blocking videos and rerouting searches to from flat Earth away from truth stuff like flat Earth, 9/11. Sandy Hook is an outright ban if you talk about it.
Yes.
I did read 9/11 and flat Earth aren't bans, but they will subvert searches from your videos. So this whole thing, what we're doing, like if people don't know to come here or aren't sub to me, they're never going to see this. Like it's going to be hidden. And then what happens is ballers will say, oh look, if you do a search, like the search for flat Earth has dropped off by 50%. I'm like, yeah, it's because they're circumventing search results.
Right.
Duh.
Correct.
Like, no, the interest in flat Earth hasn't waned. Like it's more popular now than it ever has been. But yeah, if you limit search results and you manipulate the search results, of course you're gonna have what quote unquote a drop off.
Yeah, agreed. And we were saying earlier. And it saddens me that if Red Pill leaves YouTube, because to me, like even if I wasn't a flat earther, I find certain people at least entertaining. And I think his humor, his dry wit and all that, I hope he can figure out to still share, information. But it's just, I just am not going to be happy if I'm left only watching Fight the Flat Earth and Red's Rhetoric's Hangout. Like I'll literally lose my mind, if we're stuck listening to baller hangouts, which are absurd. They're not technical. They just end up being just a complete shill fest kind of thing. And so I think that keeping a low profile, like, your channel, mine are relatively small. I'm kind of comfortable with that. We stay off the radar of Mama YouTube.
Right. Yeah, it's just too bad. Like he's gotten on a site called BitChute, which is an open source or whatever they call it.
I subbed to him, yep.
Yeah, exactly. I did too. But I don't think they have live streaming yet. I don't know. And he was like, when they get live streaming, I'm off YouTube. And honestly, I'm probably going to do the same. Just start converting everything to BitChute, and then once they go live, I'll probably jump on there pretty much full board.
Nice.
But let's look at a couple of these images because these are good images. And this one's, like you said, this one's from Jose. So what we can see here is, we've got multiple, and there's a lot of people pointing this out. I don't think I'm the first to do it, but around the same time I was pointing it out, we have people like Ranty Flat Earth pointing it out in some of his observations. But you have multiple fold lines, and the only way that that's possible is if the surface A is flat and B if it's quote unquote rising due to perspective, because the fold line rises with distance. That wouldn't happen on a ball because with distance you would have drop. Right, so these fold lines would be dropping, if anything. In fact, you probably on a ball would have one fold line, and that would be it. Because the rest you would just drop away. But we have.
By the way, Chris, sorry to interrupt. You know how ridiculous Rumpus is? He says that actually on a flat Earth it would go down. So he's giving us the characteristics of a ball. like they're literally going 180 on us. Like they're telling us that on a flat Earth it will look like a ball, and this is how like manipulative these people are. Like they're hijacking the flat surface. Like it's absurd.
Right.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
And
they're
by the way, your point
reversing.
went over their head. When remember you showed that car thing where or the boat where it was going in the distance, and
Oh,
then
I
you
have that
still
here.
see the but they missed the point that for that inferior mirage to happen, the structure above is complete, right? It's not like the mirage will happen halfway up the boat, or the building. The full item, whatever object, needs to be there before the mirage starts, before it's
Correct.
replicated below. So I don't think they got it. I honestly, or some of them did, but they just ignored it. Like, I don't think they get that the inferior mirage proves that the full thing is visible, visible, period. Right?
Right.
Is that, yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, we see here. Well, there's a couple things that they point to. Um, well, like if you were just to look at this and you were a noob, and you were just, if you were to start here, you would say, oh, look, the boat went from this big thing to this small thing. Clearly, the boat's gone over the curve, right? Because you can't see this.
Yeah,
Well, you can't see this in the bottom right image for a bunch of reasons. Obviously, you have perspective at play, so the boat's going to quote unquote shrink in angular size due to perspective, and the further away it gets, the smaller it will get. So
yeah,
that's the main thing. And then B, the atmosphere is obscuring the clarity, which comes to. I'm not by no means an expert at like what do they call it, Rayleigh criteria and diffraction, but it's
yeah,
basically that. With that, and that means your camera has a limited sensor, no matter how good it is. I don't care if you paid $5,000 for the camera. It has a sensor with a limit on it, and
yeah,
that sensor is going to see light only up until till a certain point.
yeah,
And something that can also affect that is the atmosphere. So as light goes through the atmosphere, it's call it blurred, it's distorted, whatever. So by the time you get to the bottom right image,
yeah,
the boat's there. You can see the top of the boat, but the
yeah,
line that's cut in half. So the boat above the line is the real boat. The boat, quote unquote, thing, the object below is the
yeah,
mirage.
correct.
Um, but it's simply perspective and atmosphere at this point. Now, if you go back to this video, which I don't have pulled up, but if you keep watching this part at the end,
Yeah.
it stays here on this plane, and it just vanishes.
Dude, they didn't want to talk about it when you were doing this, man. It was like an awkward
No.
silence, and I love those, dude. I just love sitting there when people just don't want to talk about it, and they
Now, if
just
you
want to say, "Oh, they're blurry. Why do you always bring us blurry stuff?" The blur is the point. Like, I just love when they say that. It's
right.
ridiculous.
My next favorite is, oh, go out on a day without refraction. Like that's
Right,
even possible. Like
right,
what are you talking about? So
right.
I can't believe I found this example because this is an identical example but over land.
Hmm.
So what we have
But Chris,
here,
sorry, one point before you go on this, just for the
yep,
sake of the audience, like the whole argument on and I'm not trying to hijack Life is Short's excellent work on his presentation, but the fundamental understanding of the bottom of an object being handled differently mathematically than the top, the inferior mirage proves that, because that's where the mirage starts, at the bottom. So it's going to have a natural sort of cloudiness around the bottom of an object and not the top in these cases when there's an inferior mirage. So
exactly,
it's going to be more difficult at the bottom, and then you have the competition of the water itself, being something that's difficult to contrast against, whereas the top doesn't have that. It's just going into the horizon, into
right,
the distance. So there's a lot of different things, and that's why I think Life is Short made a great point. I don't want to misquote him, but he said the bottom up thing is actually one of the last things that we need to sort of rest on when it comes to these kind of things. It's all the other things that you're about to go into deeper,
right.
the miraging, the atmospherics that are cloudying, sort of muddying the waters of the whole object, but always from the bottom first.
Right. And I mean,
Yeah,
let's just go back to this real quick, and we'll move on to the other one. But like,
yeah,
look at the detail in the back of the boat. You see some white here. You see a sharp edge here. And then when you go to the very next clip, that's only probably 30 seconds or 60 seconds later, you don't
yeah,
see any of those details. They've been obscured by the refraction, what I'd call refraction zone.
yeah.
So you can't see any of those details. But let's go on to the next one because the next one is just brilliant. Let me pull it up. Um,
Where did you get this one? Sorry, Chris. This boat video. Was
Oh,
this
I just searched boats going over the curve on YouTube and I
nice?
found it.
Cool.
Um, I think the guys, I'm pretty sure the guy's a flat earther. I'm not sure, but
That's such a good one, dude. That's insane that the atmosphere
That's a
mirages
good one.
itself, kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, it
that's
does. So here, let's look at this, because what we have with the boat over water is exactly what we have here over land or a road.
yeah,
And it's sort of reversed, where the top left is the further away and the bottom right is closer.
yeah,
Um, but so let's just start with bottom right. Now, there's a couple things that I pasted in this. There's like text box, but even if we start in this one, so you can clearly see the line that I drew in the black line is the fold line, and
yeah.
below that is obviously the Mirage, and above it is the real
Correct.
car, the object. Now,
The
as we go,
physical thing, the entire
yeah,
thing.
the
Yep.
physical
Mhm.
object. Now, as we go back, what you see is a result of Rayleigh criterion diffraction, where the beams of the light are appearing to merge.
Yeah,
So not only are they appearing to merge, but the car is blobbing and blurring into a singular point where you can no longer make out the detail. And so by this
yep.
point, it's like you have a freaking UFO on your hands.
Hmm.
But look at the comparison in the boat. Look, it's exactly the same.
Yep.
The car's vanishing into itself due to refraction and atmosphere, and the boat's vanishing into itself due to refraction and atmosphere. And then at some point, you don't even see the headlights. Like, think about that. Think about how bright
Wow.
these lights are, and then
Yeah,
just a mile before, you can't even see the light. So you would say, oh, look, that car is over the horizon. Well, no, it's
yeah,
it's not. You can tell it's on a flat road.
yeah.
And it's, in fact, the cool thing about this image is that the tripod was at the same height. And so if you notice, the height of the car never changes, even though it
Correct.
gets closer and closer. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. But yeah, I mean, like, we have these observations, these images for days, but so I don't want to go over too many of them. But
That
so
that I vividly remember that hangout, and ballers, especially like the deans, and not to throw them under the bus, but they claim to have a lot of experience. But the reality is like these observations and things are not what everyday people do, and I'm not trying to be rude to them, but like how many people in their corporate life, or if they're doing things in animation and movies, would be like, yeah, I wonder like what happens over 20 miles of flat water, it's, I'm not even saying that they're not smart, but like these kind of things are fairly niche and unique to this debate, and it's not always necessarily obvious how the geometry of the earth beneath it affects things that we're seeing, and I think what you're pointing out here, and many others have and done great work, that these things hold on a flat surface, and in fact, to me now more than ever, it makes more sense on a flat surface.
right.
So
Hey, I was on your channel just before, and I thought I was subbed to you, but I wasn't. So I had to sub,
okay.
but I caught a video and I didn't have time to watch it all. Where you were reading out the email from your pilot friend. Why don't you just give a quick, like,
Yeah,
couple minute summary of that email and what you think about it?
yeah, that to me is just there to combat people who are not pilots. Again, nothing personal. Bob the Science Guy, I don't think he's a pilot. He has a picture of him in a cockpit somewhere. But and even if he is, I these people that I'm talking to, I will share it if needed. If somebody that I know well, I don't want to affect this person's career in any way. I think that's where this whole debate, and just a side point, and I think you would agree with me, Chris, anything personal, family, career should not come up on these kind of debates like this. That's off limits to me, and I think that I
Yeah,
want to respect my friend's career, and he works for the government,
I
so
had to block someone the other day because he was like asking me about my wife, and I was like, dude, what are you talking
yeah,
about?
we can't. And I'm speaking to myself. I have to watch, even jokes like, I don't. It should never go there, and it's nothing here that we're doing should affect a person's ability to take care of their family or themselves. And so that's my public service announcement. But this person, I will share it in a controlled way, the email dialogue, and who he is and his credentials. I've read off his from LinkedIn on a prior hangout, his exact certifications, because that doesn't tell anybody who he is. But
Right.
yeah, it's a person I went to undergrad with. He's in the government in defense, and he's a pilot, and now he teaches that to people. I'm assuming in the context of the government. And I asked him, kind of cold, didn't warm him up with really what was going on and stuff. the debate, and he probably didn't, like, I don't think he even knew that there was a flat Earth debate at that point at the beginning of our email exchange, and so he's clearly aware of it now because I've sent him many videos. But he basically supported what actually Bob the Science Guy took me through during a hangout on SkyVector, where pilots and people that fly they do everything on a flat surface. They go point to point, a line on a flat plane, and they do not account for the Earth spinning or needing to, quote, catch up to the Earth moving beneath it or anything like that. And I thought it was probably the most compelling with him and another close friend of mine, where I asked them, and I'm just bold with people. I just like, it's flat, right? You know, like, and then it kind of catches people off guard because, like, I think in the first few seconds, to me, is actually the answer for all of this, is that they know that it's flat. You know, they realize, oh, like, yeah, you're right. We actually haven't taken into account curvature or the nose dipping or spin or any of that. You know, they just go point to point, as he even literally said, word for word, as a line drawn on a map. He never referenced an arc or a globe or anything like that, you know. And again, I think the SkyVector thing that Bob walked me through is actually even more affirmation that we're on a flat plane, because everything about that site is flat. And I asked my friend who's an amateur pilot about that site, and he knew about it, and he said there's other ones that are open source as well, that they must rely on those, you know, because amateur pilots don't have all the same resources that like commercial pilots do. You're flying for Delta or Continental, so like they need quote unquote open source stuff to actually go from point A to point B. And there are these things out there, like these websites, that do go point to point on a flat plane. So, I mean, to me, like pilots, so on the local level amongst my friends, I'm getting affirmation that it's flat. I think you mentioned that you have people in your circle that, you know, might affirm that as well. I think on a local level, people that I know and trust, and then it's icing on the cake to me that like commercial pilots, like I'm citing that one on Russian Vids or Casey Josh's channel, who are saying that it's flat. So we have sort of a consistent narrative there. And then who's competing against that? Faceless people like Wolfie, or liars like Bob the Science Guy.
Right.
So to me, I'm like, that box is checked 100 times over for me personally. And if anybody, you know, wants to call my bluff on the ball side or on the flat Earth side, needs some, you know, encouragement or affirmation that my words are true, I will share the email in a controlled way. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've shared this story before, and I don't have any like an email exchange or really even officially any evidence. So it's just my words, or my story at this point. But my boss is a pilot, and
Yeah.
I never mentioned flat Earth because I can't go that far with it at my work, of
Yeah.
course. But I just asked him. I was like, oh hey, I go, same thing you did. I was like, oh, like do you take the spin into account? And he's like, no. I go, oh, okay.
Wow.
I go, do you take the curve into account? And he's like, no. And I honestly, I kind of just left it at that. And I could see from those two questions, he started like, I could see the wheels spinning in his head. Like, wait, why don't I do those things? Like, why does it seem flat? You know, kind of. Well, I mean, again, I can't put words into from his mouth, but
Yeah.
I could see the wheels turning. So yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, look, again, flights. I'm definitely not an expert in flight, so maybe there's pro arguments on the ball side, but there's definitely pro arguments on the flat Earth side as well.
Very much. Yep. Agreed.
Let's talk about.
But sorry, Chris, can I add one final statement to that? Like,
Yeah.
my buddy who's the amateur pilot, this is obviously extremely anecdotal, but he works for a flight simulator company actually in Canada. And so, again, somebody very, very intimately involved with flying. And so he didn't obviously have an immediate rebuttal, and he hasn't since. And then he sent me an image of a ball Earth, flat Earth debate in Montreal, where he lives, that he was going to attend. So, you know, again, this is not proof. This is just stories, but let people, you know, it's for the record. These are engineers, people who fly, and one of them is teaching people to fly, and the other one's doing flight simulators for his vocation, who are not coming back to me, their friend, somebody that they know, and my close friend, you know, I was like the best man at his wedding, so we're not like just strangers. Like, he would tell me like, Shrek, you're wrong for these reasons, walk me through it, show me, you know. and we could both understand because we understand mathematics and that he
Physics
was going to attend. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons on that, just that alone. And of all the people I would probably trust, quote unquote, trust the most, are pilots or people who come up with the optimization path for pilots. And I do have a friend who's done that, but he will not respond to my emails because he knows what I'm up to, you know, and he used to work for MITRE and did optimizations, but now he works for the SEC. So I don't think he'll ever come in a public setting and talk about it. But those two are kind of the best people, quote unquote, occupations that would know, you know, from our like human perspective, non sort of government space agency kind of people. So
right.
I think it's flat. So
Yeah, agreed.
yeah,
I mean, as far as the plane stuff goes, I'm like, look, I've seen good arguments on both sides, but yeah, just when you ask pilots those questions and they're like, well, I've never literally once had to think about those things, you know,
yeah,
it's really telling to me. And then people on the ball side will say, oh, well, yeah, because of the advanced electronics, right, and like guiding systems and things. Well, what
yeah,
about in the 50s and 60s and 20s and 30s and 40s, right? Like, what about World War II? Like, they didn't have computer chips and guidance systems back then,
correct.
as far as I'm aware. As you know, in terms of an airplane, I don't know about rockets and things, but
Yeah,
you know, those guys were just flying. Like, they had their all mechanical instruments,
yeah,
and they flew, like you say, point to point. Like you point your nose up about 3 degrees at something, and you go, and you move forward straight.
yeah,
And they don't have to take that into account. And see, again, like where we get a lot of obfuscation is around like um, it's in every category, whether it's the superlooming or you know whatever. But one of the things that's been obfuscated to all hell is the gyro. I'm like,
yeah,
look, I'm no mechanical engineer or engineer at all, but my understanding of the gyro was it's gravity independent. So if you
Mhm.
spin the sucker up and you're going around a curve, that the thing would move, right?
Yeah,
Like the gimbal or whatever would move, and
yes,
that
yeah,
just doesn't happen. Like
correct.
it appears to be over a flat surface. And again, it's obfuscated because then they'll say, oh well, pendulous vanes and all these systems and things, and I'm like, well, what about you know there were pendulous and I did some research into this, and the pendulous vane was invented obviously after the original gyro. The first mechanical gyro to be put in a plane was from a man named Sperry. I can't remember his first name. I think that was his last name, John
Okay.
Sperry or something. And it was
Yeah.
called the Sperry gyro, and it was
Mhm.
a full mechanical gyro, and it did not have pendulous vanes or any of that. And it
Yeah.
flew and it worked, and it was a lot. You know, it wasn't like 10 miles. It was hundreds and hundreds of miles of long distance flight. So again, it's
Yeah.
like we can't even come to a true conclusion anymore because it's been so obfuscated. I just don't you just don't even know what to believe, you know, about something as
Agreed.
simple as a gyro.
Yeah. But your point is valid. It's like not you can't just cite these quote unquote electronics just magically. There would have been an evolution of that technology. It's not like this electronics just popped up, you know, and just boom, everything. You know, that's like the concept, the accounting for all these different things would have been done at some point in a different way, you know, and in a, like you're saying, in a possibly a non-electronic way. So if that is not the case in some of these earlier flying things, which obviously were successful, then what does that lead us to believe? You know, that it was not necessary because the Earth is flat and not spinning. So
So that's a good segue. Let's talk about not spinning. Um,
that's our
what,
strongest point, I think.
yeah, what evidence is there? What evidence is there of any motion of any atmospheric conditions of 1,000 mile per hour spin at the equator and apparently 0 mile per hour spin at the North Pole, right? And so, I mean, like, what is there? Is there a? I was actually having fun one day with Rumpus on a Skype chat, asking him, well, is there a spin gradient from the North Pole to the equator? And he
Yeah.
said that there was. I just thought that was hilarious. I'm like,
Just when you
oh,
say it,
okay.
it's funny.
Like
Like,
I
you
was
know,
just making it up. I was just making stuff up. I didn't even, you know, there was
oh my
no
God.
reality to what I was saying. I was like, oh, so there's a spin gradient. He's like, yeah, there is. And
Do you ever get mad at yourself, Chris, for falling for it, or do you just kind of roll with, you know, life and what it brings you, kind of thing? Do you ever get upset in any way that you didn't kind of maybe figure this out? I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just curious because like the spin thing for me, I'm like, how the hell did I fall for that? The curve is one thing because it's gravity, you know, and fair enough, you know, maybe, but like the spin, like that's insane at this
Right.
point.
I
Like,
was at first. I was upset at first and angry at first, thinking like, again, we've been lied to about so many things: 9/11, Sandy Hook,
true.
Oklahoma
Yep.
City bombing, Vietnam War, Gulf of Tonkin. Like it just goes on and on. World War II, etc.
Yep.
And I'm like, so I had been mad about all those things, and you sort of get over it with time. And then when this hit again, I was like, God, why would they do this? Like another thing they're lying about, and it's the
Mhm.
most massive lie and conspiracy. Call it, I'll go as far as calling it a conspiracy. Fine, it would have to be by the definition of a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy, the
Yep.
most massive conspiracy of all time, not even close.
Correct.
So I was upset at that in that sense, but not really upset anymore.
Yep.
Um, and honestly, it's like, I mean, this goes into the God and religion talk, but I could even almost understand why someone would want this hidden, right? Like,
Yes.
in other words, you could think about how many fanatical people are out there today without technically having, call it 100% evidence of creation,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
But it is, I mean, to be honest, before flat Earth, you would have had to have mostly argued it's on faith, right?
Yep.
I don't think that's far fetched. For most people, some people would claim science, fine,
Hmm.
but for most people, it's faith. But if you prove a flat Earth, a non-motional center of the universe, flat Earth, like holy cow, now we've got
Right.
something. So just imagine the kind of reaction you would get from society. I mean, we can barely tell people about like you know this gossip and things without people flipping out.
Right.
So imagine them finding out about this, and then so just the fanatics out there. I mean, you'd have non-fanatics committing suicide, in my
Right.
opinion, because it's
Yep.
just such a massive deception.
Chris, sorry to interrupt, but this I never understood in grad school why there was always like debates on campus about like science and religion and like faith. I was like, why are people talking about that? It's like, what's the big deal? I never in my mind, even at that time in engineering and stuff, I never understood why science goes against religion, in any real way. Now I get it more and more, with the ball earth and atheism and some of the majority, it seems like the ball earthers are, especially the staunch ones, are atheists who push it heavily. But in my mind, I never quite understood why there was even that tension, in those two communities. But yeah, very, very aware of it now. And I think you're right. And I've mentioned this many, many times on my channel that it would be overwhelming for even people who are kind of comfortable with a creator and God to know this in particular at a young age. So it literally is a truth that if it were made known quickly and abruptly and in a broad, systematic, rigorous way, it would lead to chaos, in my opinion. Yes.
So actually, let me now I listened to what you just said. Let me go back to your question and answer it. I am very upset that I was tricked about God and Creator my whole life. My whole life, I was an atheist, and I don't mean like from teens or 20s. I mean my whole life. Like as a kid, I never went to church. I never
Mhm.
believed in God, and it was just the way my brain worked. I thought I was smarter than everyone else. I thought I
Yeah.
knew better. I thought I was a reasonable person with logic, right? You always hear reason and logic when you talk about not believing in a God and being an atheist,
Correct.
and I thought I was that.
Correct.
I read all the Dawkins books. I read Hitchens. I read every Sam Harris book, and I believed it all. And I didn't really do a whole lot of other research into say like evolution or those kind of things.
Yeah.
So that to me is the biggest anger towards anything. Was I was tricked into not having more of a relationship with, call it God or call it a creator
Yeah.
or something like that in my life, because now I'm 35 and I've been
Hmm.
in flat earth for like 2.5 years or so,
Yep.
and I'm like, I feel, what is it? I feel like part of me was taken, and
Yeah.
that I can't ever get that back.
Even just entertaining the idea, right, Chris? That alone is something that is so cool for me now. It's like even just entertaining the idea of one entity out there doing all this is like amazing. So yeah, that's
Right.
wild, dude.
Yeah. I mean, so that's been part of the fun is obviously researching the flat Earth. The other part is coming up with ideas and theories on what that entity or being is.
Yeah.
This God creator entity. Is it a kid outside of a computer that he built? and he wrote a program and he's controlling us, not controlling us, but like he set the parameters of physics and he, you know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
so you could take it to that simulation theory.
Yeah.
Is it a supernatural um, entity that created, that created all matter
Mhm.
and set the laws in like right? And so that to me has been a lot of the fun of it. So
Dude, I think everything's on the table. I think, I had a great conversation with Pete Shea at the end of yesterday's hangout that he did. And I think it's the cool thing about this is that what I've learned personally is that we certainly don't have uh, 100% certainty on a lot of things in life. And I think that the ballers say that, but they don't come across that way. But I think really everything's on the table now as far as, why we're here, what's going on and all that kind of stuff. Just it's cool, like removing all this junk, like the spinning ball and the atheism and the evolution and all this kind of slavery really, and intellectually and physical is you can kind of this that in and of itself leads to so many interesting questions, thoughts that me personally, even somebody who's been quote unquote in the church, I've never entertained in my life. Like, it's amazing.
where did you get your name, the Mind of God? Was that just something you thought of or something that you grew up, where did you get that from?
No, I think I think I regret actually doing it because I get made fun of it more now than ever. But the
I
image I
think
just
it's
stole from
cool.
Google Images for sure. So it's somebody else's. So I may get, my channel might get shut down on that basis alone. But the name to me is reflective of the fact that I do believe now more than ever that God exists, and I do believe that He's creative and brilliant. I think a lot of people who say that he's mean, he's ignoring me, he's distant, all those things I resonate with because I felt those, many, many times throughout my life,
Right.
and still do to this day. But I don't think anybody can argue whatever that entity is, he's brilliant. Because, like, how do you come up with that? Like, how do you make a Chris Berry, a Shrek Patel, an Earth, like all the different things, all the math, science, physics, the sports, and just like, and make them think that they're free, and we are to some extent, but not fully. It's brilliant, and I think that's where I, in many ways, resonate and worship God, but in particular, His mind, and
So
that's
do
sort
you
of
think
I
it's
believe we all came from there.
Yeah, I mean, and I've heard you sort of talk about this before, but like, give me your thoughts on is it about I think you've referred to it as the God, as Fe flat Earth being the God deception. Like, do you think God is he kind of had to do it, or like he kind of has to do things like you'll hear as an atheist, I always heard things like, well, why would God let little kids die in a car crash, those kind of things, and I'm like, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, so is it all sort of unfortunately has to be sort of take a hands-off approach for the most part? I mean, I know there's stories in the Bible about him taking a hands-on approach with certain things, but say since then, like he has to take a hands-off approach so that he knows, what's on the up and up. Like he knows who's being honest and who's not being honest. Those kind of things. Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I don't like, it's a difficult thing to answer because it'll always be trite. It'll always not be exhaustive. But I think, in the very least, it's a way for him to get us to appreciate, first and foremost, that he controls what we know. And that will always be the case. And second, lies. Like, I think God can deal with literally everything, and God has dealt with every manner of sin, every perversion and I'm not saying for us to go and do more of this, but God is already knows that. He already knows all the things that people can do, but he cannot deal with lies, because once we lie, it just creates a distance. Even in like our earthly relationships, it's like people can forgive, even in like relationships that have been together for many, many years, people can deal with things and even forgive. Doesn't necessarily mean they stay together, but like they can deal with like reality. But once you lie and you make a habit of it, it really just undermines the ability for two people to come together in an earthly sense. So in a spiritual sense, it's infinitely worse because God already knows like the quote unquote truth. So we're like lying to him about stuff he already knows the answer to. So to me, I think that's where something about lies and deception really, really irks God, and he doesn't want that. And I think everything that you and all the people in the truth movement do to bring out truth, to me, is such a beautiful thing. And it's, to me, almost and probably equally up there with charity. I would say truth and charity to me are two things that people can do, and forgiving people are up there and align you with God immediately. And so I think this deception was there for us to be conditioned to love truth, in the very least.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the most biblical scholar, but I don't think lying is in the commandments, right? Like, it doesn't say thou shalt not lie, kind of a
It
thing.
says don't bear false witness. So it implies to not lie. And
Oh,
just
okay.
by saying worship God is enough to say, don't lie. If it says, worship God alone would kind of encompass all those things, don't lie,
Right.
don't kill, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, that's good. So as I say, I mean, if it wasn't, it definitely should be, because that's one of the most, to me, egregious sins, if
Yeah,
you want to call it that, of
agreed.
humanity is lying. I mean, just imagine a world where no one lied, right? I mean, things would
Jeez.
be drastically better, in my opinion.
Right, right,
Um, I mean, in one sense, I guess you could, I guess you could say, well, no one can lie, so therefore I'm going to be honest and tell you you're an ugly idiot or whatever.
right. Yeah,
But in the other sense, it's like you would never have false flags. You wouldn't have
correct.
false wars. At least you might have wars, but you would know the truth because they would have to tell you the truth. Like, yeah, we're going to war because we want the oil, or because
Right.
we got mad at this person for this or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunately, in my opinion, not the world we live in.
I think it would get worse at the beginning, but then it would eventually be perfect at some, like there would be a weird moment where, people, if you're married, you'd have to maybe say things that done things you regret, and then it would be difficult. But then over time, you could then be honest with people, and not just in like intimate relationships. I mean, even just corporate relationships and all that stuff, you just have to be honest, like to your boss, like, hey, I'm not feeling well today. I just don't feel like getting out of bed, like I just,
Right.
and then, people would just deal with it. And I think it would get better eventually, and the world would reorient itself. And then, but I think it would approach paradise. I think that's the thing about the Bible, even, is like, if we did even, and I'm speaking to myself, if we even did 1/10 of what the Bible requests, there would be no end times. There would be no deception. There would be really no sustained evil on earth. And I think that what God is doing, and this is not to lecture to you, but just what I think is happening in a broad narrative, is God is baiting us into loving characteristics that he already loves, in order for us to think the way he does, and then the kingdom of heaven will be established. And the Bible says kingdom of heaven is just people. It's not like candies falling from the sky, unlimited, lollipops, or it's just a group of people who think like God does, and then we do the things that God likes, and there's harmony. And I think that that's an exciting thing to look forward to.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see. I
You're
had
helping
some
though,
notes.
CB. You've destroyed me personally, dude. Some of the stuff you've done recently with the optics and stuff, I think for people who've been in this a while, I think was the last box to be checked. And I think that again, I owe a huge amount of credit to people like Russian Vids and Oakley and everybody, afterwards. But I think there's a very, very compelling body of, quote unquote, body of knowledge and science on YouTube now that support flat Earth in a very, very, we're not insane. I think that's why I don't want my name or anybody that I care about to be labeled insane believing in the flat Earth. I will defend that till the end, because it is not an insane stance. It's a very, very sane and rational position to have.
Right.
Very sane.
Yeah,
So.
and I mean, we talked about how what's sane and what isn't sane. Superlooming isn't sane. ISS flying around at 17,000 miles per hour isn't sane.
Yeah,
In the
correct.
supposed vacuum of space that violates the second law, is insane. Like,
Correct.
there's a lot of insane things that people believe, that they think, and I obviously know they think that it's the truth and that it's reality, and that
Yeah.
it just simply isn't. Like, look, let's just let me play devil's advocate and say that the Earth is round and spins, and and the model is basically right. There's things about
Yeah.
the model that are wrong. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, even if
Agreed.
you gave that much leeway, which I'm just doing it for sake of argument,
Yeah.
there's things about the model that just aren't right.
Yeah.
So, but that people still believe about the model, and they tell you that's true about the model.
Yeah.
So it's just like, well, what else isn't right about the model? What else isn't true that we could prove? And
Their whole
again,
posture is hypocritical, because they're a cool model and their science says that they're open to refinement. They want it to be more precise. They don't want to be wrong. But then when we come and ask them things and contradictions, and they have to start invoking things that are not real, it just shows that there's something else going on, because their whole sort of preaching, on science and what it's all about. It's never certain. It's always open to scrutiny. We want the model to be more and more refined, and all that kind of stuff. To me, is not the case, because then we get emotions. We get you're an idiot. We get you're insane. You should be locked up, and all these kind of things. And so there's something else spiritual going on, in my
Right.
opinion.
So somebody in the
Yeah.
chat, just to sort of sidestep a little bit, someone said,
Yeah.
Charlie says, just as sunset is completely contrary to flat Earth, it is not rational to support a flat Earth when flat Earth cannot explain a sunset. I'm like, who are these people? Have you done no research whatsoever?
It's not even that we have to explain it. It's what's happening. You just look out, something in the sky is moving that way, and it's doing that. Even the gravity is the same thing. If we want to get to the mathematics, we could model it. It's not a problem, but gravity is just what's happening. Like, something is dropping, and the intrinsic property of that thing is doing something, and then we would make note of it and say, okay, we dropped this from there and it moved at this speed, and then that's what it is. There's nothing beyond that, and I think that's where all the stuff that Riley does is great, because he's very, very clever, and
he is.
Art their quote unquote research papers and using their own nonsense against them. Brilliant at it. But, from our vantage point, it's the same thing with the sun. It's like what we're seeing and the boats and all that, that's just what's happening.
Right.
There is something bright up there moving that way. And whether it's changing angular size or not, that's just what's happening.
Right.
That doesn't change the fact that there's no curve. There is curve, or we're spinning, or anything like that. So
let me show Charlie how it's possible to have a sunset on a flat Earth. So I'm sure most people have seen this Rob Skiba video, but it's one I go back to because I'm like, it works, it makes sense, and it looks exactly like a sunset. So he's got a piece of paper or whatever this thing is with this fake sun on a flat table, and he's got a Fresnel lens that's acting like the atmosphere, and he pulls the fake sun back in a flat surface, and it appears to fall on sync. Let's see here. He's talking, but here we go. He's pulling it back. It's going perfectly flat, and it's dropping because of refraction. That is, the Fresnel lens is refracting the light. That's exactly what's happening. And if he keeps pulling it back, it will go completely out of sight. So yeah, that's like the most simple one to me. I'm like, why are you?
But dude, once we take away their understanding on the other stuff, the boats that you've already dismantled, we don't have to listen to them on this, because they don't know what the hell they're talking about, right? Like, if they don't understand the boats and the bottom up and all that, those optics, they're not going to understand this. So like, we kind of like we get this one for free. Like, once we get rid of them on the other stuff.
And here's my favorite one, which is like, where's 75% of the building? Well, look at this effect that you can get from lensing and refraction.
Wow.
It pulls the whole building out of view just with distance. There's no change. It's on a flat table.
Right.
And he reproduces, right? Because see, people will show this image and say, "Oh, look, half the the bottom of this CN tower, or whatever this tower is called. I think it's CN tower is missing." Well, look, he got the exact same effect with using a Fresnel lens. And I'm like, look, ballers will say, "Oh, well, the atmosphere isn't a Fresnel lens." I'm like, yeah, I agree, but it's probably the best thing we have to represent the atmosphere and to represent what refraction can do. Oh, and by the way, like, he just happens to get an identical optical effect. Like, is that a coincidence or what? So no, clearly that's what's happening. It's not that this town is underwater.
I've lived there. I've lived right beside that building. I know that it's not. So is this Toronto?
Yeah, I think it's Toronto.
Yeah, but no, it's like even the amount of blockage that they show in those wind turbines, it's too much obstruct. It's like, I just feel bad for the ballers, because like, they think, oh, look at all that obstruction. Sometimes it's too much, because if you do run the numbers, and I know why Rumpus did not run the numbers on that obstruction with the wind turbines, because it's too much curvature. Like, if he actually genuinely went through it properly, and I was like, dude, tell me you've done that before. He's like, no, I haven't actually gone through the numbers with this one yet. And I'm like, you bring this image up every single hangout, and you haven't actually gone through the process to confirm that that's the radius of the Earth doing that. So these guys are just like magicians.
Oh, dude, Rumpus has been sitting on analysis after analysis for literally 2 years. So for 2 years, he's been telling people he's going to release all this analysis. And just a week ago, I was on a hangout with him, and I asked him, Rumpus, when are you going to release this analysis of the superlooming of Anthony Riley 40-kilometer observation?
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I've had a hurt shoulder. He's had like a hurt shoulder for like 6 years now.
I was gonna
Like
ask, dude. I was like,
all
listen.
these issues. I'm like, dude,
Oh my
people are
gosh,
going
bro.
out. All flat earthers are going out, doing observations. I've done my own tests. You've done your own tests. Like everyone on our side's doing stuff, but you can't put out an analysis you've been working on for like over a year. Like, what gives, bro?
His shoulder is a conspiracy theory now. Is it even hurt? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
Seriously, no, it is. Well, I mean, I think he said something else at this point, but I'm like, it's still an excuse. He's like, oh, a couple weeks. It's always a couple of
Yeah,
weeks
agreed.
for like a
But Chris, just so
year.
you know, if I didn't mention this, my experiment in the hallway, I actually redid it with a different iPhone because I have an older one and a different orientation, and I actually did see my feet in many different tests. And initially, I was like, "Whoa, that's kind of like weird," but I realized it's exactly what Life is Short presented in his video: is that different cameras and slightly different
Angles
orientations
and
of
heights,
it
yeah,
control what you can see. And so I know for a fact now that my hallway's flat because
of
I have
course,
seen my feet with a different camera, and I'm not talking like I raised the camera on the ceiling. I mean, they're both on the ground, like
right.
just a centimeter off the ground at the most. And so my hallway's flat, and I laid down and I could see you could genuinely see whether there's 2 or 3 inches of hump there that would
Did
prevent
you
my
post that
feet from
one?
being. Yeah, it's flat, dude. So like, it's again, I'm just kind of lazy. I didn't do it, and I just didn't want to post the other video because like ballers, honestly, I'm not trying to be rude, but like they're honestly sometimes too dumb. They don't even understand the point, and like I don't think they understood the point of Life is
Well,
Short videos because like he showed 2 different cameras who have 2 different properties. Will display 2 different things, and so that proves that it's not just line of sight. There's something else going on
right.
mathematically.
Well, so yeah, there's no doubt Life is Short is the absolute best when it comes to explanation for optics and
Yeah,
observations
he's the
and
man.
why things appear to disappear bottom up. There's absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, he's the.
Yeah, his stuff is fantastic. Um, but see, here's the problem: is it's not that they don't get it. Like you would post the second one and say, "Oh, look, it's flat because I used a different camera." They would come up with some other excuse like, "Oh no, it's higher. You lifted it higher than the other camera, or
Right.
you had on different, more like neon socks that you could see better in the dark, or some bullcrap, like glow in the dark socks. Like who knows what they just come up with stuff. Like when I did my cloud under the, sorry, the shadow under the cloud test,
Yep. Yep.
every time, no matter how good it was, no matter how much I showed and how much detail I explained, it wasn't good enough. I didn't do it right. And then finally, after the third time, they all
Yeah.
conceded it's possible, but that's not what we see in the real quote unquote image. So what we see in the real image is the sun coming up from underneath. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, how do you really know that? Because the sun's so big, it's so far away, and the light is spread out in well, 360 degrees, but to us, at least 180 degrees, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
how do you know it's not 180 degrees of sunlight hitting and reflecting? Like, you just don't know.
Yeah. It can't work with a 93 million mile sun and clouds orbiting ball Earth. Like I was kind of like playing with people that doesn't work. It's a local sun that's doing that. There's no way any of those images. I don't care which image they put in front of us and put our quote unquote feet to the fire. They're hijacking our local sun, man. I'm tired of it. Like 93 million mile sun doesn't answer shit out here. It doesn't answer a thing. Because that's not what we experience at all,
Right.
ever. And by the way, I saw the rebuttal to that. The guy who did one, he didn't even allow the light rays to get down, towards the whatever the mountain that he was using or whatever. Like he just put the light source way away. So the rays didn't even get down to even create a shadow on the bottom of.
Or that's the other thing is people will go out and do tests and either purposely do them bad or just do a bad job and not get the result that they should get, or that you can get by doing that test. I did
Yeah.
it 3 times. I did it on 3 different surfaces. I did it with 2 different flashlights. I did
Yep.
various heights and distances, and I got it to work. Like it
The
wasn't
rays have to
hard.
get down beneath, right? Like it's like both models, the rays get to the surface, so they're doing tests where the rays don't get down. I'm like, oh my, when I saw that, dude, oh man, frustrating, but it's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. So again, I think we're in such a bizarre place because we're getting admittances from people like Rumpus and others that we're seeing things we shouldn't see. But again, it's
Correct.
what I'm calling a stalemate, because then they just say, oh, well, it's super looming around 150 feet of curve.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I just haven't seen. I guess, look, I guess to be intellectually honest, I guess I'd have to say it's possible, but I haven't seen any evidence, like none,
Yeah.
that it is practical or realistic. And
Uh,
until I
Riley,
do,
Riley
it's not.
reaffirms the best point. The refraction happens, but it's not going to always happen gently over the curve just to fit, the
Just to
model.
perfectly fit, yeah.
That's not the way it works. It just, yeah, that's the strongest argument. There's no way you can get light rays going through a channel that's time varying and just changes a lot potentially, and then
And
just
yeah,
have
and
a
never,
curve.
and you always see the source.
Yes, that too. Yeah, true. Well, they would just say that is effectively a light source itself. But I mean, yeah, I agree with that too. They would have to say that that's not the physical thing you're seeing, which, that alone to me, I love when Oakley always holds people to the fire. It's like, no, that's not a representation of that thing. That is the actual thing. And then that disproves Ball Earth. Once they say that those certain things that Ranty's posting are those mirror tests and whatever, all that stuff, it's like, if that's the physical thing you're seeing, then the Ball Earth is dead
See,
immediately.
see again. Let me point to some obfuscation and some intellectual dishonesty from the ballers. So they go out and do laser. People go out and do, like, dozens of people have done laser tests now, and the ballers' response is, "Oh, the light spreads, and
Yeah,
therefore it spreads over the curve." Okay, so now they're going out and they're using some imagination, and they're using these mirrors to reflect the sunlight.
yeah,
Okay, the light isn't spreading because, well, that's just not how mirror reflections work, but it's the light, but it's still going around the curve from 18 miles away. See, that's what's happening. So it's like, no
yeah,
matter what you do, it's
yeah.
always going to be just going around the curve, and it's just, there's absolutely no evidence for that.
Correct. They'll always say that, and I think in the stuff with the bottom up, we'll say it's a lot of other things. So I think it's like, I'm not even saying it's 50-50. To me, it's like, I'd much rather be on the flatter side, because this super looming thing has no support, no basis. Like, you can understand the stuff with the blockage, the stuff, just like I did in my hallway. We can understand that. Like, it's not some random research paper that like one person knows out there. And the funny thing about that is that it doesn't even reference looming. It's actually it's a paper on compression. So it's like the word super looming is, I bet you if you did a control F on that paper that Rufus found, it wouldn't mention super looming at all.
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. Yeah. Um,
I almost don't even want to call him out on it, because I don't care at this. We need to care, but I'm almost like, even my other observation, because I bought like a really long string and two lasers. I honestly am too lazy, and it's like my hallway's like 10 feet away from me, and I still don't want to do it, because I'm like, this is getting absurd. Like, the ballers, you'll feed them stuff and then they'll just make up things, and I'm just like, what's the point? Like, a lot of us now, we know, it's not moving. So
so I know I sent you the link about the FE Core I think they call it force the level test.
yeah, that's dope, man.
And
Yep.
yeah, and they went out and they did it, I think about 2 weeks ago now, and they have their preliminary results, and the preliminary results show flat. But I think I'm not sure if they're going to release those results, or if they do just keep calling them preliminary, or let's call it undetermined,
Yeah.
or in it. But I'm pretty sure they're probably going to go back and do it again. I know they were going for like 2 miles, but they only made it like 3/4 or maybe 1 mile, just due to the conditions and things.
Okay.
Um, Actually, I think it was the rigorousness of the test. It took like 12 or 14 hours just to do a mile.
Wow.
Because they're using such precision instruments, and they're measuring every, I think, I want to say 40 or maybe 60 meters up to, like, for that mile. So God, how many points is that? Like, tons.
Yeah.
Uh, Um,
But wait, CB, is it something physical we can go and see, or is it going to be like collapsed after it's done? Or
what
do you know how
what do you
that
mean?
works? Like, is it
Collapsed?
something any of us can go and see after they've done their test, or do they like, you know, um, do they take their setup away, kind of thing? Like, it's not. Is it a
Oh,
permanent?
no, 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 it's not. No, that's definitely broken down. Um, but they have the measurements and the results that they're analyzing.
Mhm.
Um, but it's an interesting test, and it's honest. I have to be quite honest. I don't fully understand, like, how they're doing it, or what the results I'm not sure how to say it. Like, I don't fully understand the test and what they're doing, but Chris Van Mater, who's one of the FE Core members, or engineers, if you want to call it, he is a surveyor, and he has this device, and he is a certified technician or whatever of the device, and
Yeah.
apparently it can measure 1/10,000th of a foot or something like, I mean, an inch,
Wow.
like 1/10,000th of or a foot, I guess it is, which is just nuts. So the idea is they're setting up level rods across the 2 mile stretch, and then measuring between each rod every 40 meters. And then at
Yeah.
some point they would measure, if it's on a curve, of course, they would measure the curve, and if it's flat,
Yeah.
they wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's the basic idea, and I'm sure I just butchered I'm sure it's way more complex than that. But
No, I'm familiar with that concept. Yeah.
yeah, it was really fascinating. And again, the preliminary results, and I hope I'm not, I am an FE Core member, but I just did like the $25 a year, so it was basically virtually nothing compared. I
I
spend that
didn't
much
know
in
you could join like that.
yeah,
Oh, cool.
and you can get invited to their Discord and all that stuff, and you get first dibs at their test results, which is really why I did it. I wanted to sort of first crack at their test results, but I mean, I spend more than that at Starbucks a week, $25. So,
Yeah,
um,
I would join. That's great.
but so I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but I do know the preliminary results are flat. They said there were some errors, which of course in any test are expected, and they think the errors are due to the wind, and the wind sort of moving the rods. But they're trying to take that into account and sort of factor those errors out. But it's fascinating nonetheless. And look, here's the thing: it's like whether I'm doing it or FE Core or you or Branty or anybody, it's like um, we're not. At least I'm speaking for myself. I'm not manipulating the results. I don't think you manipulated your varying results using different cameras. It's like we're showing these things to be true. We're showing flat. We're showing
Yeah.
no curvature, and it's just
They claim that if you can see my hat, you should be able to see my feet. I put the camera. It's not like I put the camera beneath the ground. When I'm arguing with Sean in the chat right now, I'm like, how do you want me to prove that it's flat, dude? Like, your own logic says that if you can see the top and bottom of something, with a camera, then you have line of sight, and then there's no quote unquote occlusion. So if it's that way with one camera, why is it different with another camera? What's going on? There must be something else going on, like what Life is Short presented.
so that's what I'm saying is people like Sean Hawkins will make claims with absolutely no evidence to back up. He'll then have people
Yeah.
like me go out and test those claims, prove him wrong, and then say I'm wrong. And that's
Yeah,
what he's
agreed.
doing with you. In a sense, it's a manipulation. He might be getting off on it. I'm not sure, but he'll sit in his chair in his house or apartment or wherever he lives, and
Yeah.
he'll do that. He'll command us to prove things of claims that he's making with absolutely no evidence, and it's beyond frustrating. And that's why after my third attempt at the shadow, which by the way I did a pretty good job of demonstrating, I was like
No, it's
I'm
dope. I love
done.
that video. Yeah, that's amazing.
So I mean, and that's what I was saying for you is like if you have a second video, that's enough, man. Like you've proven the claim. You've proven two claims: one, the floor is flat, and two, depending on the different camera and aperture and sensor, you're going to get a different result.
Yeah. Both cameras are only like, a couple. Again, it's not even necessarily even how high they are off the ground. It's just as long as you can see the top and bottom, you have what they call line of sight. So if you have that with one camera and then you don't with another camera, then there's something else going on. And I think that if it can be seen across like 100 feet, I mean, what do we all think is going to happen over 20 miles with like water, waves, atmosphere, like who knows what else is going on, and all that kind of stuff. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's like a peanut gallery. It's literally the phrase to describe it is people, you bring them things and they'll constantly say no. And it's the same thing with long distance photography. They'll always say, oh no, it fits perfectly on a curve, even though it's an uncomfortable explanation. Like,
Right.
when I
Even
heard Bob the Science Guy explain that really, really long distance image, and then even Zinder was slightly honest to say, like, he was kind of taken aback that it was only at about 1,000 feet elevation that it was taken. And he's like, whoa, it's like that's not really that high for something, seeing whatever, 250 miles away or something. That's
yeah.
pretty far, and it's not going to get shorter with technology. It's not like technology is going to like degenerate to get worse. You're going to see further, as it gets better. So that's the minimum. I think the term's the infimum. It's like the
I,
minimum of the max. It's going to get bigger.
right. I just hate how they've hijacked perspective and refraction and called it curvature. Like it just, and then when you do the research and you do the test yourself and you look into it, it's obvious that's what has happened. It's perspective and it's refraction. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's why
Yeah.
boats appear to quote unquote go over curve.
Yeah.
It's why I don't know. It's just everything makes sense. It's why things disappear bottom up. Like it all adds up when you do the research. And again, Life is Short is the number one guy who's done the research. He's got mathematical formulas and all sorts of stuff. Which again, the
Yeah.
ballers ask for mathematical formulas. You give them one, and then they say, "Oh, that's still not right. That doesn't work or whatever."
And his presentation was like very clean. Like we've never heard anything. I've heard Metal Slugs drop a bunch of nonsense on a Google image and claim that that's ball earth proof. We've seen Rumpus hide a PDF that he won't even make public, saying that things like just showing curves, gradients that he claims exist everywhere uniformly throughout Earth and all this stuff. And it's just like a mystery. It's like it's absurd. Like they cannot. That presentation Life is Short has done is above any kind of criticism from
Oh, it's unbelievable.
ball earther and definitely Sean Hawkins.
Oh, of course. Well, that's what I'm saying. The difference is you have someone like Life is Short. He goes out, he does all these tests and observations. He puts it in document, puts it publicly and freely out for consumption. Comes up with like mathematical formulas for supposed curvature, which is really just perspective and refraction. And then you have people like Sean Squawkins sitting on the sideline, on the he's a bench warmer, and then says, "Oh, this guy is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Why why do we see certain angles, Polaris or whatever the hell he's on about there?" And that's the thing that ticks me off the most is that the disparity in evidence, in participation from both sides and on either side it's clearly flat earthers are out there at least 10-1. I mean, like,
Agreed.
you have your people, you have like your Soundleys and out there taking photos, and Tim Osmond has some photos, etc., etc. But I'm like, when it comes to ball organization trying to prove the curve by doing tests like this, just people making baseless claims like boats go over curve, and they've never even looked at the actual evidence behind that claim.
Yeah. It's ridiculous, man. I think even like Sly Sparkane, like his video, dude, his like camera was like pointed to the ground for like 3 hours, and like I didn't care. I donated a very, very small amount, but like then there's a leak in the system, and he says it's still in favor of ball earth, and I'm like, dude, you just did a test that's like you admitted that it was like wrong because there was a leak in the network of pipes. But you're like, nah, it's still in favor of ball earth. Like that is ridiculous. Like they tell us into quote unquote intellectual honesty. That is ridiculous. Who would do an experiment? Yeah, I did an experiment. It was kind of like water, kind of spraying all over the place or whatever. But for the most part, it's probably a ball. Like, come on. You say that in any academic institution. I don't even care what school you say that at. They'll laugh at you. They'll be like, go away.
Saying no, the Sly Sparkane thing, I didn't even waste my time with that. I knew he was going to bungle it and fumble it, which he did, of course.
Yeah.
There was no surprise there. He's bungled pretty much every test I've ever seen him do. His Cavendish test was bungled. The balls are moving.
He was doing it in front of everybody.
Right.
Yeah, dude, that was bold, man. He's trying to get Bulge to show up live, real time. Like, oh, that's freaking gutsy to do that. Not just Bulge, but like a small amount of Bulge. I'm like, okay. If you want to do that,
what an idiot.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So like, I love in the side chat because these people are just proving my point. So Minister Sobriety says, you realize that because of refraction, if the Earth was flat, the mirror reflection tests they do would be bouncing off the water unless the mirror was aimed into the sky. I'm like, again, what tests have you done to prove that claim? Absolutely none. They sit on the sidelines, they warm the bench, they make false claims without tests, and then they put other people down for going out and doing real tests. It drives me bonkers.
Yeah. But they're moving the mirror around, and the whole fundamental point is that you see the actual thing. It's like it's not a representation of it. That's what I think Nathan does well. And when he talks people through that, it's like you're not seeing a representation of it. You're actually seeing the light from the sun physically interact with that object, and that's it. Directly.
Correct.
and not a representation of it. And I think that's the case. You know, you could use a mirror or whatever reflecting entity. It's just the point is the fact that people are seeing things, the physical thing, very, very far away. So yeah, I mean,
We've been going about 75 minutes. Do you want to
Yeah.
open the panel up, or do you want to drop?
yeah, my bad. Sorry, dude. Yeah, I'm open,
Oh
dude.
no, I wanted the one-on-one for a long while to chat with you and get your take on things, because once we open it up, you're gonna have people like Sean Squawkins coming in and yelling and stuff. So
Yeah, put it in the squawk box, but that's fine. No, I'm cool, man. I appreciate your times, Chris, and your efforts, and all the people out there who have lives, things to do, you know, and you have a family. And I think, like, for me, like being single, I really wish I was more sort of gung-ho about tests, because I actually sort of have time, but I try and support in other ways. But
right.
yeah, I think the evidence out there, to me, it's very, very compelling. In the very least, even a staunch baller should question certain aspects of the heliocentric understanding. In the very least,
Right.
you know. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm almost sad that I found this thing in the flat Earth at this time in my life, because before I got married and had kids, I was all over things like 9/11 and Sandy Hook or whatever and all that.
Yeah.
And I was out there. I was doing, I call it activism. I posted a video of a radio show I did in 2006 in Houston, local radio station that broadcasts to like almost 2 million people.
Wow.
So if I had found this then, I would be all over it so hard, like even more than I have now, with more tests, more streams, etc. But you know, it is what it is, and I found it when I did. So, well, I posted the link, and I don't think anybody's joined yet. So,
okay,
waiting for a couple.
I'm in a way almost glad I didn't find it, because I was in a serious relationship, a long-term one, with a girl who was very, very deep in evangelical Christianity. I don't think that she'd co-sign this, honestly. And I'm not saying that like I'm better than her, or people are bad people necessarily, but a lot of evangelicals are going to staunchly remain ball earthers, you know, like it's ridiculous. And so I don't know what it would have done, honestly, to that relationship. And I've had others since then that have, you know, we don't talk anymore. Like I have a close friend who is like a high school science teacher. And, you know, once I approached him with this type of thing, I mean, it really puts a huge like chasm between our relationship and our friendship. And we don't talk, because we can't really talk, you know, especially more and more that I know that the earth is flat. And I mean, he's literally teaching kids every day something contrary to that. It's
right.
Crazy.
Mies Kang, what's up?
What's up, buddy?
Where does that name come from, man? That's a weird name. What does that mean?
It is a long-running inside joke from like a decade ago. My brother was dating a girl who was probably about as smart as Sean Hawkins, and honestly believed, swear to God, that the plural form for moose was meese. I could not stand this girl. So every time I would see her, I would call her Mies. And this just became a huge joke for me and my brother, all our friends, our family.
I got you. You know, that's funny. The Mies.
Mies Kang is the man, dude. This guy is a warrior for truth, man. I always enjoy interacting with you guys.
Yeah, I don't think I've been on any panels with you yet. What's your story? How long have you been into FE?
I've been looking into it 3 years. I've been convinced for about 2, but I only just started doing the Hangout thing. Like I don't do tests or none of that. I'm not convinced that we'll ever be able to prove it. I'm just here because Sean Hawkins is my favorite flat earther.
He's flat earth asset number 666. So
yes. I can't see the chat anymore because I'm doing it on a phone. But I really appreciate listening to you guys. I really enjoy the Mind of God. I'm only new to you, but I enjoy what you're doing here too. And your guys' conversation was awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. Like I just started streaming. I've been joining panels for a while, for like maybe a year and a half or so now. and I never streamed until now. But it is fun. It's kind of a headache to get set up like with OBS and all, but um, it's definitely fun, and I like the one-on-ones. So this is my first one-on-one with somebody because, you know, like I'm about to open up a panel when people like Hawkins or Sean G or Minister Sobriety, if any of those guys join, or you know, whoever, Rumpus or Brenda, it just turns into like a scream fest. You're wrong. You're an idiot. You know,
Yeah.
the tests that you did while I was sitting on the sidelines are wrong. Those kind of things. So
I see you get a lot of hate, in that, like, I've done a couple streams with Mind of God, and I was telling them some of my history, and I just heard you saying, like, I had to leave the Hangout to join, or the YouTube page to join this, but you were saying you used to do a lot of 9/11 activism.
yeah, 9/11 was my first foray into conspiracy, if you call it that. Way back in like 2005, I was in college, and I had never, you know, I was a dumb like 20-year-old. I'd never done any research, or you know, I was all mainstream pretty much, and
Yeah.
9/11 woke me up to let's say the possibilities of mankind and what
Wow.
we're capable of.
Right. No, me too. I saw Loose Change in like 2006, but I was still 17, 18 then. So when I saw it, I was like, holy shit. Like, I had no problem accepting that what I had seen was true, but was still, like, I was just about to graduate high school. I was such a crazy place that I had to put that aside and focus on other things. It wasn't until the BP oil spill that something about that linked, like the YouTube algorithm linked me to Alex Jones, and hearing him talk about that, I was like, I wonder what he thinks about that 9/11 thing. So started looking at that, and it was all downhill from there. Someone is calling me. I'm sorry.
No worries. CP, how did you come across this? What was your first endeavor?
Yeah, dude, I wish I actually remembered the exact video. It would be kind of interesting, but it was definitely our good friend Russian Vids. So, you know, I just enjoy every video he puts out. I think that he, man, just somebody who's known the kind of things that he's known, and I don't necessarily agree with him on everything, but to know what he's known for potentially over a decade and probably more, to me would be such a heavy burden, you know. And again, I'm not trying to say like I'm some victim now, but like it's not easy, you know, when you kind of go against the establishment and the kind of stuff he's pushing, not many people would understand. So I sort of resonated with him from the get-go, but a lot of it was Russian Vids, and then went to more of the technical stuff with Eric Dubé, and then you know, I would say probably through Oakley's channel and just through his like conviction was the time where I felt more and more certain about the flat earth. And it wasn't actually the religious part, even though people probably would think that, especially in lieu of my channel name. But, you know, I think there was, it was mostly, that was the graduation, I would say. It went from those 3 steps. And then now to me, it's a little bit more, not cosmetic, but it's more on the optics. I literally think the only thing they have left that is bottom up, but I think the scary thing for them is it doesn't always happen, and sometimes it happens too much, and then, you know, it just happens in such a variable way, and then it requires curvy water, and it requires things tilting, so it's not a strong foundation. But to me, that's really all they have left that I take even slightly seriously. But you know, I think I believe this is a spiritual thing, so I think God has to give them something, you know, to make their stance slightly plausible. But I think that aspect's crumbling daily.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was having a quick read over here. Another quote from Squawkins. He says, "They're relying on the flexing of the mirror to create a diverging beam of light, and they chose the best days for refraction to happen. So by simply flexing a little 4-foot mirror causes the 150-foot curvature." Oh my god.
Oh man, just say 7.6R, say looming, say at least say that. Like, just leave it at that.
Well,
Adding all that other stuff makes it like worse for them. I don't understand, man.
oh dude, did you see what Mick West had to put on his Earth
Yeah,
calculator?
I did. That's looking real weird now.
It says no, not accurate for observations over water very close to the horizon. You know why?
Because John D got him on that.
Well, yeah, definitely. It's in response to John D, but it's in response to everyone because everyone who's doing these tests are showing these massive
Right.
like lack of curvature, and he can't have that. He's got to put at the note that says, can't do these tests over water because refraction. Without, again, it's just a blanket claim. Like, well,
Wow.
what are the conditions that would cause that kind of thing, right? Like, there's no conditions, there's no figures or numbers associated with it. It's just the blanket statement that you can no longer trust his calculator over water.
Yeah. I mean, there's been way too much time. They say, well, it's on us to prove that it's flat. It's already been proven because those things cannot happen on a curved surface. And so, they would have had also an equal amount of time to produce one thing that's compelling, what I call linear, repeatable, and observable. It's been plenty of time, and it's like, it's just a peanut gallery. Everything that goes against the curve gets rejected. So, well, what does that mean then? Well, it's flat then. It's like that. If that's the way it's going to be, that's a person who's hiding something. It's they don't think that we understand human psychology. Like, we've been with people, we've said lies, we've been on the other end of lies in our life. We know what it's like when people are lying. Like, that's why sometimes I just wish they could get in a room, get some kind of like psychologist to like explain to them basics about human interactions, so human psychology, and like just teach them things like, guys, okay, if you don't admit anything else going on in the world and don't let us talk about it, we're going to kind of wonder maybe why. We're going to think to ourselves, why? And then if we're being censored about things that are mainstream, we're going to avoid you guys. It's just going to get to that level. And that's why I'm very thankful you've started this and other people are doing things on a smaller scale, which I think is really the only way to get out of YouTube, Mama YouTube's umbrella, her warm embrace. So
Yeah.
Some of those channels are getting absurd. Honestly, I genuinely like Sean G's because he doesn't censor really that much at all, I would say, and he's just more diplomatic than the average person. But some of the other ones, and I think you guys know who I'm talking about, they're just going down the wrong path. It's bad.
Well, it's just become a circle jerk amongst the ball
Correct.
cards.
Correct.
Like it's claim, counterclaim, claim, counterclaim, and with no evidence, no backing it up, no tests having been done. The best, and I'll give them credit here, the best that they're doing is doing photos and videos, but that's really it. The only baller I can think that's doing non-photo and video tests is you mentioned him earlier with Slice Barcane.
Yeah.
And every test he's done has been just totally crap.
That was a disaster.
Yeah, his last one was a major disaster. See, and then if he was intellectually honest, he would say, hey, look, I'm going to come back out knowing what I learned and do it again right. Instead, he said, oh, it's still leaning towards the ball. Like, why would you do that? Just say it's mixed results or whatever, inconclusive, and do it again.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, he posted the results in like a notepad document with like 10 numbers. I'm like, really? Like, if any flat earther did that, it would literally be a 3-hour hangout on Red's Rhetoric laughing, and getting 500 super chats.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, exactly.
We're more merciful, actually. Like, I feel like we're a little bit more open, because, we've been on the other side. We know what it's like to be a baller and all that kind of stuff. But I think now, just the spin part for me and the sheer mass of the earth, I know that their understanding is bollocks. There's no way that we're on a ball moving any direction. It's just, it doesn't work. This thing is too heavy. I don't know how to say that in like a sophisticated way. This earth is pretty big, like the force and the energy that would be needed to do any of the stuff that they're claiming would be supernatural in and of itself. So.
Right. Yeah, man, I think we got sidetracked earlier about talking about the spin just because it's so ludicrous.
Agreed.
Like I mean, like even let's just play devil's advocate. Like, is there anything you can point to that says, okay, well, but if you look at this, then maybe it's possible?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. Like the Foucault pendulum, the whole gyroscope thing is what they cite, but let's say that they knew this spin before that. Anything within the quote unquote atmosphere that they claim is moving lockstep with the Earth you cannot be in that environment to measure something because everything's moving in unison. They haven't articulated how within that quote unquote reference frame are they able to isolate that thing not experiencing the movement, because essentially that thing would just be independent or agnostic to the actual spin in order to quote unquote measure it, because like everything else is moving. So they haven't said that. And then I asked ballers, and I'm kind of having fun with them now, like, how did they calibrate that? Did they put that on something else that's moving and then verify that?
Right. Like, is it always? Does it never not move? Like, you would need to get it to not move to calibrate, right?
Exactly.
If it's always moving as
Correct.
its baseline, then how would you know where the baseline is? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I thought of that too.
Correct.
And then you, because I thought, oh well, maybe they like. I mean, and this is just me thinking stupid things because it doesn't make any sense. Like maybe they lifted it in the air somehow off the surface, and then then a baller was like, no, it would still spin because it's it's being moved by the atmosphere with the Earth, so it would still move. I'm like, well, then you could never baseline the damn thing.
Exactly. You can't really. It's like it's the ground and the atmosphere above, and these buildings, these high rises, apparently are moving, all in coordination, in lockstep. And it has to, because that's the reality that we experience, And so I think that any device, whether it be a gyroscope or whatever, would not be able to do that because it's within the frame that's actually moving. And so they would need to explain to us conceptually, how does something measure something when it's within the the system? It's literally like going in water and then asking somebody to like measure what the air pressure is out of the water. It's like you got to get out of the water, to do that. You can't measure the rotation when you're actually like literally drowning in it and completely engulfed in it. That's not the way it works. You can't cherry pick, because they talk about reference frames, and if you're in a particular reference frame, which is just voodoo language for them to isolate effects and sort of like cherry pick and piecemeal things together to make it work. But this whole notion of like reference frames is just like lingo for them to separate the effects out of things, because we know that planes do not care or adjust for the spin. So they have to say, oh no, that plane is in its own reference frame. It's like each gravity vector gets its own, way to interact. No, that's by itself. It's not touching any other gravity vector. God, or the god of the ball, the atheist god, made it that way. And it's the same with reference frames. It's the same kind of voodoo that they have to start spouting, and then it's just not reality. It's not real. Yeah.
So let me, and I want to stay on the subject, but let me read the latest update from Sean Squawkins.
Yeah, this ought to be good.
He says, where is it? Those mirrors are flexible, and they use that flex to their advantage. They really are pitiful. They really are pitifully intellectually dishonest. All fighters are. So they somehow knew that a half-inch flex of a mirror.
CB, I wish I screen captured this. I asked him one time, who's worse, the greedy bankers or us? And he said us. Sean Squawkins. This is a quote. I was like, oh my God, this guy's totally lost. Like, I'm like, dude, why are you making ridiculous statements like that, man? Come on.
I think Sean is actually a genius actor, just portraying like this hillbilly mainstream Glober cult member.
Yeah, that could
just to help the flat Earth cause. Like, there's no way this guy's legit. I think he's just doing it for sarcasm or satire. There you go.
Yeah, it could be.
Well, anytime you have to like violently yell to get your point across, there's something wrong with you.
He's yelling at his own people too, which is strange. Like, it's like, what's going on, bro?
Oh, my favorite is the Baltards fighting. Like, that's my favorite. That's the best.
Dean and Rumpus have had some of the funniest interactions, and George and Rumpus have also had probably the second best interactions. Right. A married couple that just wants to decide who's smarter. So who decides what to eat for dinner?
Jose and George are on Major Outs, right?
I heard like indirectly,
because I'm on their Skype chat, and it's just so hilarious. And I've thought about leaving, but I'm like, no, because It's like half of my laughter of the day is in that Skype chat when they're fighting and things. But see, here's the difference in the ballers and the flat earthers is if I say, like, if you said you think gravity is a real thing and it's a force and you know it's pulling things down, and I said I don't believe that, we would like discuss it, and I would want to understand your point. If a baller said something about that, like they don't believe in gravity, or they thought, you know, this is different than the ball model, but I still believe it, even though they're a baller, someone like George Olympus would jump all over them and like to call them idiots and yell at them, and you know, just because they sort of disagree with the quote unquote official model. But that's what I like about flat Earth, because there's no quote unquote official model yet, at least. You know, we have the flexibility, not as much as those mirrors flex, but we have some flexibility of you know, being able to do that and to say, look, yeah, I don't know if gravity's real. I don't think it's, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's real based on X, Y, and Z. Maybe you do based on X, Y, and Z, and I can get that. Like, I can see gravity being real and I can see it not being real, right? But to me, that the shape doesn't hinge on that, right? So it's sort of it's a variable thing we can discuss without having to like go at each other's throats.
Agreed. The luxury we have, and I think the cool thing about our angle, and I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth on this panel, but the people in flat earth, especially with like a religious, at least openness, is that we do get to rely on God for a lot of things. It's like, that's the scary thing about being a baller, is that they literally have to rely on their model to explain everything, you know, at some point, maybe not necessarily right now, but ultimately that they need an explanation for everything. It's like, for us, it would just be like this kind of place that we're at. And then the questions for a lot of us would be about our surroundings, but also why we're here, you know, and things about spirituality and God and all that kind of stuff. So the exploration, the sort of extent of our surroundings would be carried out in a much different fashion, you know, than in the ball Earth. And I'm thankful for that, because it's not just where the sun is and how far away it is and what it's doing and all that kind of stuff. We would start wondering, like, who made that? You know, like, why? You know, like, well, why did he make us? You know, and like all that kind of stuff. And I think that's the most nefarious, evil part of the ball Earth deception, is that it's anti-questions. We're not allowed to ask questions. You know, we're just asking questions. And I think that's what Red Pill, in my opinion, does probably the most eloquently, is like, he's just asking people stuff, you know. He's very clever and very smart, but he does it in like a kind of like innocent way. And I think some of us are not that as like friendly anymore, you know, because we're tired of not being allowed to ask questions, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
Rumpus to tell us we're an idiot when he's telling us things are super looming from ridiculously far away. It's like absurdly far away. Like, come on,
it's
dude.
like we're purposely like being played by some, like you said, by God or some higher entity or something, somebody that knows the truth is playing us.
Yes.
And they know how ridiculous it sounds to say super looming is the reason or whatever. But, I mean, like, God, so H. Bob says, which school is teaching flat earth, Chris? None. Like, why would a mainstream public school teach flat earth, you moron? They're not going to. Like that. Like, that's your best evidence, the ball, that mainstream public schools aren't teaching flat earth, so therefore it must be round. Like, how many logical fallacies is that? I can't even count.
Globe Earth proven.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what it is. A lot of this stuff, they just don't know that they're helping us, you know? Like, if they're making me become a flat earther because I'm not allowed to go into their community and their hangouts and talk about things that are happening outside, like literally right now. Like, I have no choice but to be a flat earther. I'm obviously happy being one, but these people just don't get it, man. Like, oh my God, it's just crazy, dude.
Let's see.
Mies, what's on your brain? Sorry, man, I'm chatting away, dude. How's everything on your end, buddy? All right, well, that answered it. I think he had to go.
Oh man, he must have. I think he said he was on his phone, so either phone died or he had to take a call or something.
I don't know, dude. Unobstructed, I would be curious to see where this would go, because if I was a young person and knew the things that I know now, I would be asking my physics teacher certain questions, and
no, absolutely.
I don't know the way it would work out at the end.
Oh. No, yeah, absolutely. Well,
sorry about that.
No, all good, Mies.
Here's the thing.
I pressed the wrong button.
There are kids in school asking these questions, and it's upsetting the apple cart.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Like I've seen like there's videos that people are posting of it, and it's I mean, it is what it is, whether you think
Really?
it's good or not. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be done. Like it has to be done.
Chris, can you imagine a high school teacher having to defend how we spin? Oh my gosh. And not even knowing about Bob Nodell. Let's just say that they don't know about that, and that's not going to help. But what are they going to say? Yeah, we have this pendulum. Okay. like,
Right.
like, I know that would be like how I would react to that. I would be like flabbergasted.
It's
And then I
like,
told my dad about flat earth, and he's like, oh, just try and take the positives. I'm like, well, okay, fair enough. As an adult, I might be able to do that. But if you're a kid and you're kind of being shoved this stuff down your throat daily, I mean, how do you react to that? You're not allowed to question things for a year after year after year, potentially 20 years. That's a long time. I don't know.
of course. Yeah, I mean, look, it's gonna come out eventually. Like it's gonna come out like 9/11 Truth came out, meaning not necessarily the mainstream is going to report on it and say that it's what the truth is. Like, oh yeah, Building 7 fell due to demolition. No, I don't. That's not what I mean by coming out. But the people are gonna know the truth, whether they like it or not. It's at some point. Like I'm pretty sure was like 80% of people or Americans don't believe in the moon landing. Like 60 or 70% believe there was a conspiracy around JFK. Like it's gonna get to that point. It might take 5 or 10, 15 years, but it's gonna get there.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. Because there's a lot of quote unquote truths out there that they're just people know now, or sorry, conspiracies that have moved from the realm of conspiracy. And I think it's
Right.
difficult.
The saddest part is like in 50 years, 9/11 will be known as having been some sort of false flag conspiracy. But the saddest part is all the people that were involved, just like JFK and everything else, they're going to be dead.
Mhm.
Like they're not going to have been punished here on Earth, at least the way they should have been punished.
Yeah.
In this time, like they're going to have, they're going to go off to their mansions and their $1 million 401ks and all that. I mean, because we have to be honest that the rich people did 9/11, right? Whether it was Bush and Cheney, I don't know. Like I don't know all the players.
Yeah.
But it clearly is people at the top that can pull the strings and control these things. Like it's not a coincidence that Marvin Bush was the head of the security for the World Trade Center on 9/11. You know what I'm saying?
Not at all.
Yeah. Right.
Like that's just not a coincidence that I'm willing to believe in.
Right.
So look, they're gonna go off to their mansions and their $1 million 401ks, and they're gonna die like in the sheets of a king. But that's the saddest thing to me is that.
Yeah, man. I think. Sorry, Mies. I don't want to interrupt, man. I know.
No, I mean, like that used to bug me. But like just speaking for myself, once I personally discovered that Jesus in the Bible is true for me, I take comfort in knowing that they will see consequences in the afterlife. Even if that ends up not being true, I believe that. So have your mansion, have a great time, do all the stuff you want to do. I hope you live for 1,000 years, because once it's over, it's big trouble.
Yeah.
I think one of the key things for me about religion and God now is I can only hope with all my being that it's true, simply so that those people can be punished. So those people can, no, I'm serious.
Yeah, that's a true statement, dude. That resonates.
So that those people can face the Creator, and He will say, or she, or whatever it is, will say to them, why I gave you free will in the sense that you made in the sense that I didn't control anything as the Creator. Why did you do this? Or what was going on? Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I can only hope that some form of justice will come for them, be it this life or the afterlife.
Don't even hope. Count on it. Guarantee you. There's no way. There's no way that just like there's no way this globe thing is true. There's no way this all came from nothing.
Yeah.
Even if the God of this Bible isn't true, like justice is coming down one way or another.
Agreed. Yeah. The scary thing about the judgment that's described in the Bible too is that it's like even all the evil that obviously we've been involved in to some degree, even the thoughts and like that kind of stuff will be brought into judgment. And that's like just scary. It's like we see some evil now and it's very blatant, but it's like literally every single act and intent and all that will be measured. Obviously I believe in a very, very righteous way. And I think that's why I think more and more these days, for me personally, it's a difficult thing. I'm not trying to get pity, but it's like, it's hard because we have to like push the truth and like do what we can to like distribute it. But we also are going to be judged on how, we behave. And I think that's the part for me personally, it's not that easy to decide how to behave because, I'm very quick to like, get upset and like, make fun of people and all that kind of stuff. And then I kind of write it off as like, oh no, this is for the quote unquote truth. And I think that even us as religious people who feel like we've been given certain truths, like we still have to be careful because like these things are going to be measured. And I'm speaking to myself because you guys, there's a lot of evidence of this stuff for me on the internet, but yeah, I think God is a God of balance. There's no way that, people will quote unquote get away with this level of evil. That's, yeah.
Well, and I think based on what you said, I mean, obviously if you believe in some sort of religion or I guess typically Christianity, that everyone sins. Like it's my understanding. Again, I'm a total noob, but my understanding is it's more about, do you understand why what you did was wrong? Are you sorry for it? And are you remorseful and do you repent, kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I look. That's my understanding of Christianity and sort of believing in Jesus is basically, okay, and it's not even a thing that you can do anything you want, and just because you say you believe in Jesus, all your sins are forgiven, right? It's more like, yeah, I killed someone. At the time, I thought it was okay, but now, 5 years later, I realize what I did was a horrendous crime, and I'm just paying for it every day, mentally, physically, right? That kind of thing, where you still have to sort of like, you can't be like a partying, like sleeping with 1,000 women, drug addict, and not have some sort of punish, and think that's okay and not have any remorse whatsoever, and like you only hurt minor people, and it all be okay. Like that's my understanding of it, at least. But
I agree with that. And for mainstream Christianity that says all you got to do is fold your hands and say a prayer and that's the end of it, you're good to go. I think that is completely misguided. I agree.
Well, hey guys, we've been going 107 minutes, so a little over an hour and a half. I'm gonna have to wrap it up. Do you guys want to give one last shout out or statement before we drop?
Appreciate both you guys. I enjoyed the conversation. That's all I got.
Mog?
Yeah, CB, dude, thanks again for your time, man. I know that you're very busy and stuff, but your videos, the kind of very succinct, and get to the point and all that. Your pursuit of the truth, helps all of us who are quote unquote truthers. So have a good night, buddy. Thanks again.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you guys, Mog, especially you joining me for the whole time. And like I said, I like the one-on-one. This is only my second live stream, and it's like I said, it is fun. So I see the appeal in wanting to do it. And like you said, I hate to say this because I feel like everyone else has other responsibilities and things too, but yeah, it is hard for me to do this. So maybe once, my goal is once and maybe twice a week to do a live stream. Maybe do one with a group, try and get the first one I did had 10 people in it the whole time for like an hour and a half, so that was a good one. And then do so once a week do the full group, and then once a week do like maybe a one-on-one with someone I can get. So with that, I'm gonna say we'll wrap it up. I'm gonna play my little outro, and I'll talk to y'all later.
Peace.